I don't produce content nearly as often as I used to. And it is extremely rare that you see me show my face in a video. As I've stated more than 2 years ago, that was something I would phase out altogether, was showing my face in any more of these productions. However, considering the circumstances, this is the only way that I can actually do these productions, or this video, better yet. Typically, when you look in the description box of my productions, you'll see a PayPal link. You'll notice that PayPal link is not there, because I will not make 1 red cent off of this subject matter. Forgive me if I sound a little slow. I'm still processing what I've just recently found out just yesterday. And for a little bit more than a week now, I've had some brothers leaving me inboxes asking me about the whereabouts of David Carroll. I've tried reaching him. I've called. It goes straight to voicemail. As a matter of fact, I called earlier today, and I'm going to explain that a little bit later on. I've left voice messages, and I've left a text message. I've got nothing back from him. This is not like him, because he always gets back to me. We don't speak that often, but the few times we do throughout the years, or the year, he always gets back to me, and vice versa. Even if it's later on in the day, even if it's later on the next day, he always gets back to me. So the fact that I have not heard anything from him immediately started to alarm me. But I started to keep hope alive. I kept hope alive, and it was dwindling very fast. But the only reason why I kept a slight inkling of hope alive was due to the fact that the phone was still going straight to voicemail, which only lets me know that maybe the phone is turned off, physically the phone, but the service is still on. Because typically if something of the worst case scenario had happened to this man, then his phone service would have been terminated, and I should have received an error message stating that this number is no longer in service. I've come to the conclusion now that will eventually be the inevitable, that number will no longer be in service. Now, I called again earlier today and left a voice message, not because I was hoping that he might have picked up, which that would have been great, but we sadly know that that's not going to happen. I received confirmation from Brian Solange yesterday that brother David Carroll, better known as Michael Carroll, has sadly passed away. I seen this information on his Facebook, I guess his sister's Facebook. But you brothers had been informing me before I even knew of this, asking me, telling me it ain't so. Please tell me that this brother didn't pass away. Then I emailed Brian Solange, and Brian Solange confirmed it. Then I checked, or somebody sent me a screenshot of his sister's Facebook, which has been confirmed. Now, the point of me leaving that voicemail was in hopes that somebody from his family actually has access to his phone and can access those voice messages, and at some point get back to me. And I gave them my name, my contact information, and how me and Michael Carroll came across each other's paths. And I'm hoping that they respond to me. I left them my condolences. And if anybody responds to me, the sooner that I know something is what I'll let you know. But now, on another hand, if somebody does decide to get back to me, and they choose to tell me what happened, it will be up to them, and I will respect their wishes on whether they choose for me to speak about this publicly as far as what happened and what led to this man's death, or whether they wish to keep it anonymous. It all depends on that. So, I mean, the sooner I hear something, or as soon as I hear something, hopefully I'll hear something, I'll be able to get back to other people. I'm going to also try leaving his sister a message on Facebook and hoping that I can get something to find out what the hell happened. But I guess the signs were there, because Michael Carroll, I would say within his past two productions before he disappeared, didn't sound too good. And he stated it in his last production that I think I'm trying to come down with something. Michael Carroll was only 56 years old. That's fairly young. That's not even senior citizen age, if I'm not mistaken. And if this news is absolutely true, which it would be nice to say that, okay, it's not 100% confirmed, or maybe this is a bad rumor or a bad joke, but I'm just going to have to go on the limb and say that it is true. That's a young age for a man to check out. Michael Carroll was one who lived a solitary lifestyle. And listening to Brian Solange's video that he made, I got around to finishing the whole thing earlier today. And he talked about the Marlboro Man lifestyle. And I hope I'm saying it right. I don't mean to butcher it. He talked about the Marlboro lifestyle, the solitary lifestyle, the introvert lifestyle. And he stated some things when it comes down to living that lifestyle that a lot of men need to learn how to live that lifestyle. Now, I'm going to add something onto that, because this is something that deeply hit home to me when he mentioned this. Is that one of the downfalls about living that lifestyle, being to yourself and by yourself, that if something were to happen to you in your home, how much time would go by before somebody even notices that something happened? As Brian Solange mentioned, in his situation, his rent is paid for the next 6 months. So if something happened, who would know? The landlord wouldn't even give a fuck enough to check until they start to notice a stench. You get my drift? If you were incapacitated, how long could you be incapacitated? And how much damage would that do depending on how long this goes on? Brian Solange, I would say over a year ago, maybe over a year and a half ago, mentioned something about my prime years on YouTube. Now, I do understand that those golden years, that golden era that we once had on YouTube, those days are long gone. And many of you remember me from back in those days, and my videos helped y'all out with a lot of stuff, and it reminded you of a different time frame. And even though some stuff might have been difficult, we weren't dealing with what we are dealing with now. Things seem just a bit easier. Things seem just a lot better. This is another reason why I had the time to crank out the videos that I did at a consistent rate in which I did, but I'll discuss that later on in another video. In those years, in my prime years on YouTube, and it might be safe to say that maybe it's split down the middle now, but for a large portion of my years when I was producing, especially in those prime years, I was living as a superintendent. I was working as a superintendent. And I knew a man, a black man, who lived in one of my buildings. who lived that solitary lifestyle. I don't know if I could say he was an introvert, but a solitary lifestyle is something that he definitely lived. And although me and him didn't always see eye to eye, especially during my first year, I would say, of taking the position, as years went on, we started to have a mutual respect for one another. I would say within about the first year or so. This is a black man who was overweight, who I never would see him with friends. I would never see him with family. I don't think I can recall seeing him with anybody. I think occasionally you would see the escorts that he would hire to come over and service his sexual desires. But I remember back in 2014, and this was the height of my prime years on YouTube. 2014, March of 2014, that was the last year that he would continue to be amongst us. And I remember his health started to deteriorate. He had a drinking problem. He was obese. He was overweight. It was bad. And I remember the last conversation I had with him, which was rather sad. The last time I would speak to him or see him alive. And I was telling him, well, maybe you might want to look into a herpetologist. Change up your diet. Maybe that can do something. I don't know. And I'm not even sure if I even gave him a number or some contact information to places he can try to go to. And as he turned to go back into his apartment, the man broke down in tears. The reason why that was is because he knew his time would soon come to an end. The following week, I received a phone call from one of the neighbors who lived next to his apartment. And they stated that there's a smell coming into this apartment. And instantaneously, I knew what it was. I knew the worst had happened to him. I knocked on his door, got no answer. When I got the manager, I told the manager, the first thing I mentioned to him is, listen, he's dead. He's gone. He's gone. When we finally got the fire department to open the door, the stench that came at me was unbearable. I will never forget it. And to see blood on the floor, spats of blood going from the bathroom, going from the bedroom, going to the living room, and to walk inside of that apartment and find a rotting corpse. It was a traumatizing scene. I mean, the body was starting to decompose. His body bloated up because he'd been laying there for so long. And we're talking about just a few days. This is in the middle of the winter, and in that building, I gave a hell of a lot of heat, so that even helped furthermore exacerbate the decomposition of his decomposition of the man's body. But I can tell, and I'll never forget how his body was slumped up on his couch to the left-hand side, leaning to his left-hand side, with dry blood stains hanging from his mouth. And when I looked around in that apartment, I seen that there was blood, like I mentioned, that went from the bathroom, went to the bedroom, to the hallway, and back into the living room. And I sat back and I thought to myself, this man didn't die. First of all, you can just tell that he didn't die a peaceful death just by looking at his body. Secondly, we knew that this man suffered. And how long was he suffering before he finally checked out? How much pain did he endure? He was in that apartment going back and forth. I don't know what happened, but he died by himself. And he knew it was going to happen. So I want brothers to think about something, and I want to just add on something. Because this is one thing when I think about David Carroll situation, this is what scares the shit out of me. As I hope that this brother did not go out in that same capacity. We knew that Michael Carroll lived alone. He stated that he was never going to get married. He stated that he had no intention on living with a woman. He did it one time and he was done with it. He knew he was going to die alone. But the fact of the matter is, and I'm hoping that this didn't happen, I'm hoping that he died in a hospital somewhere, surrounded by family. I'm hoping that that wasn't his fate, because he had gone missing a month ago. His sister just recently posted that on her Facebook page, I believe, over the weekend, this past weekend. So if something happened, I scrolled through some of her posts. I didn't see nothing about pray for my brother, he's in the hospital. I didn't see anything that stated this. And I just hope that this brother didn't go out in a horrific way, dying all alone. I hope that wasn't the case. So I want to ask you, brothers, and I want to add something on when it comes down to living a solitary lifestyle. Is what I'm going to say to that is this. Learn how to adapt to when you need to. You don't have to live a solitary lifestyle unless this is just what you're presented with. So if you need to go back to living and understanding how to be by yourself, then that's what you do. But if you could come across a woman and listen, I'm going to say this much. When I'm talking about brothers, I'm talking about you brothers being with black women. That's what I'm talking about. Because I've stated my case, and I'll address that in a future video down the line. But when I'm talking about black men, you being paired up with a woman, I'm talking about women within your own race. But if you happen to find something outside of the race, it is what it is. I'm not here to condemn nobody. What I'm going to say is this. If you can find somebody that gives a fuck about you, if you can find somebody that you can get along with, if you can find somebody that puts a smile on your face, that understands you, that y'all see eye to eye on core values, then I would say then don't pass that up. You don't have to prove to nobody that, hey, I can take it or leave it. Listen, I know that about myself. I can take it or leave it, but I have nothing to prove to anybody. If I want to take it, I'll take it. If I want to leave it, I'll leave it. But the bottom line is this, and the reason why I say this is that people are social by nature. There's no human being that is 100% antisocial. And I'm not saying that this is what anybody's implying. But if you came across someone who was antisocial, typically these people are suicidal. Typically these people have all types of mental problems with them. They'll become, we've seen what happened with Elliot Rodgers. All these other people who couldn't get any attention. They snap. The fact of the matter is, we all know that at some point or another, we are all going to meet the fate of Michael Carroll. That's inevitable. That is the final stop. That is the final terminal that the train stops at. One day we are all going to meet that fate, whether we like it or not. And the fact of the matter is, can you say that you want to die alone? And if you die alone, do you want to witness yourself dying like the resident of one of my buildings that I used to work at years ago? Because I'm almost certain if that brother knew that that was how he was going to go out, then chances are he would have done something different. Life is too short. Michael Carroll occupied his lot. I would have never thought from the time when I first encountered one of his videos. I've been on YouTube going on close to 11 years. January will make it 11 years. He's been on YouTube, 9 years, 8.5 years? And I just asked the question, if that brother would have known that all he would have had was 8 years left on this planet, what would he have done different? If that brother would have realized this, what would he do different, if anything at all? Now, to just let people know, David Carroll, just like anybody else, like I said before, we're social by nature. That's just in the nature of human beings. And even if you don't or can't see yourself being in a relationship, you're social. He mentioned how he would socialize at the cigar shop. He would sit down and chop it up with the brothers, with the fellas, and solve the world's problems. This is the infamous quote he would always state. I was sitting down at the cigar shop, solving the world's problems with the fellas. We also know, and many of you should know, that Michael Carroll has a daughter. As a matter of fact, his daughter recorded him in one of his videos. I believe it was either back in late 2013 or early 2014. But he has a daughter. We should also know that Michael Carroll socialized with people by producing his content and giving you his content, his illustrious body of work, his videos that many of you will still be looking at years to come after his passing. He also socialized, and I would say this, within the past 2 years, I have become more withdrawn from YouTube. And he has actually contacted me more times than I've actually contacted him within these past 2 years, I would say. But he would also socialize with me. And the times that we would actually talk, we would talk for hours at a time, just laughing and chopping it up. To the point that I'm saying is that people are social by nature. And now it's nice to know that if you need to go into the solitary lifestyle, that you can actually handle it. It should be a training practice so you know if you need to do it, you can actually do it. But once again, if you come across an option to where you don't have to walk that path, because that could be a very lonely path, then why put yourself through that? Because at the end of the day, life is too short. One day you're here, and the next day you're gone. It could be any one of us next time. Who knows? So what I'm saying is, for every brother who's listening to the sound of my voice, who holds David Carroll in high regard, I want you to understand David Carroll planted his roots in the lot that he occupied. Michael Carroll chose the hill that he was willing to die on. At some point, we all are going to have to choose a hill that we are willing to die on. So when some of you brothers say that it's time for me to pick up the torch and carry off, I'll say this. My body of work is different from the Honorable David Carroll, Michael Carroll, also known as 5723 Michael. He did his work and his teachings. In many cases, me and him have ran adjacent along similar lines. But as I mentioned, he planted his roots in a lot that he occupied. Me, I'll only plant, and many of you know that I've gone through my phases here on YouTube. Many of you for many years stated, oh, this is David Carroll Jr. The reason why I say that is because I plant my roots and I pretty much extract all the knowledge that I can get out of that lot. And then I give my teachings based off of my analyzing of the information I've come across. And once I feel that I can teach, that I've taught everything that I possibly can, I detach my roots and I go off to the next lot. This is another reason why a lot of my talking points have changed over the years. And for those of you who've been following me for over a decade, know this. So the point being made is we all have our lot to occupy. And I probably will explain this more so in a later video. But the bottom line is we all are going to suffer that same fate. Considering what we're going through now, like I said, it's hard to think that the brother's no longer with us because he was with us through various different times and phases. But as I've told y'all back over the summer, that golden era that we once had in this quote unquote black sector of YouTube, those days are over. Those days are over. As I stated before, well, let me just say this. I'm working on trying to have a live stream with Brian Solange, probably by Friday. I think that'll work for me. I'm still waiting for him to get back to me so we can discuss the details. But I believe I'm going to do a more in-depth video of this. Probably try to do like a 2-hour video if I can, of production, just dedicated to the subject matter. But I want people to really think long and hard on what I've told you. David Carroll understood the lot that he occupied, and he knew he was going to die alone, and he was willing to accept that. Are many of you? Had David Carroll known that he only had 8.5 years left to live from the time when he started producing content on YouTube, would he have done anything different? If anything at all? If any of you brothers realized that you had 8 years left to finish out your frame of work, your body of work, to make your impact on this world, what would you do different? What lot would you occupy and plant and settle your roots in, and what hill would you choose to die on? And I think that's the most important message that I can give you brothers in this video, is if you're going to do something, make it count. Make an impact. Because life is too damn short. And this right here is just an example of 1 minute you're here and the next minute you're not. This could be any one of us dropping like flies. Life is too short. Don't waste it getting hung up on things that are irrelevant. And I guess that's part of the reason why I've withdrawn myself from YouTube and the certain sectors of YouTube that I used to find myself in years ago. This is another reason why I'm not wasting my time beefing back and forth with other brothers online. I'm done doing that. Those days are over. Life is too short. Because there's far worse things to worry about than somebody making a response video or disagreeing with my talking points. But that's pretty much all I want to leave y'all with. Rest in peace, Brother David Carroll. Michael David Carroll, also known as the intellectual juggernaut. You will deeply be missed. And that's all I got to say in this video. And I'll catch you the next time I do another production.